The UFC is absolutely done with Sean Strickland. And I think the worst case scenario for Dana White in the UFC is if Sean Strickland actually goes ahead and beats Dricus du Plessis. I don't think that's going to happen this time. But if he does, that is a problem for the UFC. Let's be honest, right? The whole reason that Israel Adesanya got a title shot before Sean Strickland was because Sean Strickland is a PR nightmare. I'm going to be getting into all the reasons why the UFC doesn't want Sean Strickland as the champion, who the UFC actually wants as champion in 2025, and some people that, if they're a champion, it's all good. But before I get into it, if you wouldn't mind, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Helps with the algorithm, helps grow the channel. So, why doesn't the UFC want Sean Strickland as champion? Now, a lot of people are coming to me, they've come to me and they've said, oh, well, actually he does. They do, because otherwise they would have just not given Sean Strickland a title shot. Listen, let me explain something to you, right? The UFC is a sport, and they're trying to make a situation where they are considered a legitimate player in the sports world. And they can't just go ahead and look like idiots all the time when they play favoritism. They do it sometimes when the money is right, but they can't do it all the time, right? There is a certain point where people become undeniable. And the reality is that close call between DDP and Sean Strickland, basically he should have gotten that immediate rematch. And is he coming in, getting a title shot right away? Like, they looked like fools doing that, right? But because Izzy is such a good champion, you know, he stays within the line. He doesn't say ridiculous things. He's a sponsor's wet dream. They made an exception for Israel Adesanya because it means good money. With Sean Strickland, the dude has no filter. And that is a sponsor's nightmare, right? They have no control on whether or not the champion of the middleweight division is going to start trashing their brand and saying terrible things about their company and going after their CEO and all of these other kind of things. And so as much as Sean Strickland brings eyeballs, right? And there is a good set of fans that really do like him. At the end of the day, the UFC makes most of it. Even if he sells lots of pay-per-views, which I don't know that he does, but even if he does, right? The sport is moving in a direction where they are probably going to have to find a replacement for pay-per-view revenue. Like, let's be honest, right? There's so many ways to illegally stream it. You know, it's going to come to a point where you can't do it and make it profitable with a pay-per-view. So the way I see it, sponsorships are going to be the big moneymaker for the UFC. Like, look at the canvas, right? It is painted with sponsorships, where even a couple years ago, you could see some bare space on the canvas of the octagon. Now, logos, brands, they're absolutely everywhere, right? And having Sean Strickland, the champion of that canvas, going off on Bud Light, going off on Prime Energy, going off on all of these different things, it's just something that sponsors don't want. So I think the UFC really just, they made this so that they wouldn't look like idiots, but they're really, really hoping that Dricus du Plessis handles Sean Strickland in a fairly dominant fashion so that they don't have to, you know, they don't have to deal with his shenanigans anymore, right? But at the end of the day, it's finding that balance between doing what's right for the business and what is right for the sport, right? Like, they can't, like I said, they can't look like fools, right? Putting Izzy in a title shot instead of Sean Strickland last year made them look like fools, right? They tried to do the thing that would have been best for their business, didn't work out. Now they've got to kind of suck it up, give it to Sean Strickland, and then they're going to hope that DDP wins, and then, you know, Khamzat Chimaev runs through him next. That is kind of the roadmap that they want to follow. So number one, of course, one of the reasons why they're completely done with Sean Strickland is sponsorship money, right? As much as he gets eyeballs, the reality is he is a nightmare for sponsors. It is what it is. The second thing is Sean Strickland's a boring fighter. He is a boring fighter. And like I said, although and the thing that annoys me the most about him, by the way, I know he would kick my ass, but the thing that it drives me nuts is how big of a game he talks. Like, in the build-up to UFC 297, where he was gonna fight Dricus du Plessis, he talked all this game, you know, he brought up his dad, the crying, he attacked him at a UFC event, all these different things to go and jab for 5 rounds, right? He has said on his way up, like, oh, I'm gonna kill somebody in the octagon. It's like, you're not killing anybody with a jab for 5 rounds. You're not, right? Like, you're not killing somebody with a teep kick for 5 rounds. And although, like, you're winning on points, bro, you're doing no damage. Like, look at Paulo Costa at the end of their fight. Did Strickland win? Oh, of course he won. But Paulo Costa also looked like he took no damage. You know what I mean? He looked like he took no damage. And so, like, he'll talk this big game. Oh, I'm going to kill someone in the octagon. And then he'll jab them for 5 rounds, right? Oh, we're fighting to the death, right? And then he'll jab and teep kick. And then, you know, crickets, right? And the thing is, here's the thing, right? Like, I think Dricus du Plessis is actually going to have an easier time with Sean Strickland than he did the previous time, right? And a lot of people have said this. I think Chris Curtis have said this. Like, the first time you fight Sean Strickland, it's awful, right? Because you don't know how to deal with the fact that, like, he dodges and parries everything, and he's really, really hard to hit. But the second time, it becomes easier and easier and easier and easier, right? So I think Dricus du Plessis is gonna, you know, kind of find a way he's fought him before, he understands what's going to happen, because Sean Strickland doesn't change much from fight to fight, right? Like, he looks very similar each and every time. There's the jab, the teep kick, like 1 or 2 weapons, and those are effective, and then avoiding getting hit, right? You compare that to someone like Belal Muhammad, right, who also, he's not a finisher, kind of a boring fighter, right, but he changes things up almost every single fight to make it like the worst night out for the guy he's facing, right? Like with Leon, in your face, you know, grappling, spiked him on his head, didn't give him any time to pick his shots. Whereas if you look at how he did with Vicente Luque, you know, side to side movement, kicks, lots of different things. And so you had so many different ways, like so many different looks to Belal Muhammad, right, over the course of his run towards the title, right? Whereas Sean Strickland, he looks the same. He looks the same, right? So, number one, it's the sponsorship thing. Having a guy who has no filter and especially someone who can just go off the cuff the way Sean Strickland does, that is bad for business. The second thing is that he is a absolutely boring fighter. And the third thing, and this is the reality, is that the UFC really wants Khamzat Chimaev to be champion. I don't really know why. You know, he's exciting, true. He had a lot of hype coming in 2020, but like a lot of that died out in my opinion, right? But nevertheless, he's really good. You know, to take Whitaker down as fast as he did and break his jaw or his teeth or whatever inside a minute, like, that's impressive. You know what I mean? And I think he's going to be able to do the exact same thing to everybody else. Right, like if you can defend the takedown like the way Usman did, you can get him tired and make it a scrap. But like if you can't, oh boy, you know, if you could survive that onslaught, you got a really good chance when they stand you back up. But that onslaught is coming. You know what I mean? So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But I think the UFC, for the most part, like the Strickland era is over. I think Dricus du Plessis is going to get it done, and that is exactly what the UFC wants, so that they can shut him up forever and put him to the side, right? And the thing is, right, with Sean Strickland, that will prove exactly, you know, what his worst fear is, right? That he got there by accident. You know, that fight with Izzy was a fluke, and he can't beat anybody in those top levels of the division. Right? Like that is what's going to be kind of going through the back of his mind. So let me know what you guys think. Do you think that the UFC is kind of done with Strickland? Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.